So we're starting our workout with some squats. So I usually kind of warm my joints up. I make sure I'm lacrosse balling, using a vibration gun to make sure all my muscles are really warm before I start my workout. So I've worked up to my, what you call your working set. I never really called it that before. It's just my third set. So I throw my weight on there and I'm making sure my knees are feeling really good. This machine was really great for somebody like me who has lordosis, which is a curvature of the lower spine. I have scoliosis as well, but this machine really helped with my lordosis because it forced me to keep my entire spine against the pad. So that way when I was going down into the pocket, I was only able to feel it in my quads, and I kept my feet really, really stationary and took my time going in and out and making sure that I was using my quads, kind of a little bit of hamstring to get in and out of the motion. But I made sure my feet were fidgeting, my knees were in alignment with my ankles, my abs are tight going down into the pocket. And note how long this set takes. This is my shorter set, which is my 15 rep set. So notice this set alone is already a minute and a half. So if you're looking at pacing of your workouts and how fast you're going through a movement, note how long it takes you to either video it or monitor it on your watch, and notice how long it takes you. So we're jumping over from here. We're going into a hamstring curl. Now this specific hamstring curl, lying hamstring curl specific, is a little bit different because it pops my hips up. So again, with lordosis, it allows my spine to be completely straight, and that way it's only focusing on my hamstrings and not my low back, and not really too much glute anyway, because I'm able to isolate my muscles really well in terms of not really pulling the glute in when I'm just trying to activate hamstring. So when I want to work hamstring, I make sure that's the only thing I'm trying to move, and that's the main thing that's being activated. But when you're doing this version, if you don't have a hamstring curl like this, one of the goals could be to just push your hamstrings really nice and level with the pad, but you want to push your hips into the ground and lift. Now we're rolling into our leg press. So what I do is I'll do a squat variation, a lunge variation, a leg press variation, kind of mix it up like that. Or if I'll switch one of those out with a plyo variation. It just depends on kind of what I'm feeling for that day. So this one we're doing a closed stance leg press. It's more of a vertical leg press, but it's also like slightly slanted, so it feels different than a regular leg press. Again, noting the range of motion where I'm going to. For me, my quads touch my rib cage, technically my hands, because I like to have my hands to rest there. No specific rhyme or reason, but that's just what I do. I let my knees come down, staying in one straight line, making sure my ankles, my knees, hips are all in alignment. Easing the weight down, pushing the weight up, making sure that, again, I'm using my quads, because this exercise is for quad focus. Making sure I'm using just my quads, pushing through my feet, and utilizing all of my joints and my ligaments to make sure the weight is moving how I need to move, so that way I'm able to feel it where I want to feel it. So you can change up your foot placement. If you wanted more inner hammy, inner quad, you would separate the feet more. You could turn out your feet, you could turn them in. Just make sure whatever you do, it feels good on your knees. Now for this leg extension, this is one of my favorite variations. So when it has you lean back like this, the main difference is it allows you to feel it more in your femoris, which is that middle piece of the quad where it makes your leg look lean, according to people. So that little piece of muscle that goes through, that's on the inside of the teardrop in your sweep, that's what this is focusing for this variation. Since you're leaning back, it's able to get that motion a little bit better and activate that muscle all the way up into the hip flexor. Now we're jumping over to some dumbbell work. Pretty much close to body weight. You could do this body weight. You can do this super heavy. You can kind of do whatever you want to do with it. But for this motion, I'm making sure that I'm turned out into a sumo plie. So my feet are turned out. But as my feet are turned out, I'm making sure that my knees are pressing back and kind of opening more so into a hip opener, so that my knees and ankles are staying in one straight line. So when I'm going down the pocket, I'm trying to still keep those knees pushed back, activating that low glute, pulling up to the top. So in a lot of my motions, you'll also notice that it looks like I'm thrusting. I'm not technically thrusting. So remember that I have lordosis. So when I pull up, for me, it looks like a thrust, but it's really not a thrust. It's just getting my spine straight. So note that if you're kind of trying to really mimic the video to a T, that's going to be a very, very big distinction between how I do my movements for my personal body. So you don't always need to thrust at a movement. For me, it gets my spine straight, like I said. But if you feel like you're uncomfortable and it's causing low back pain or anything like that, don't thrust at the top of your motions. And you can just really just make sure you're feeling that glute going all the way up. And we're going to finish off with some, you can call them stiff leg RDLs, whatever you want to call them. We're going to hinge from the hip. That's the key thing, is making sure that I'm hinging from the hip. My goal is to feel it in my hamstrings and my glutes and not my low back. Okay, so that's going to be a really, really crucial thing to note. So in terms of foot placement, I'm going to go hip width. For me, my hips are extremely narrow. So mine are going to be in a little bit closer. And then I'm making sure that when I'm bending over, I'm using my hammy and my glute to stabilize. And when I want to come up, I let the low piece of my glute, what people call a tie-in, is really just my glute. I use that piece of my glute, pull it in as tight as I can through the body, and squeeze my hamstrings and glutes up to the top of that motion, and then release as I go back. Now, when I'm releasing, I'm making sure that that tension is still there. It's not completely relaxed, because if it were to, you would kind of take all the tension off of the muscle. So I make sure everything is engaged and ready to rock and roll.